I want to thank Debbie Upton for her comment on my Facebook Live post last week, where she asked me to fix my collar. And I want to point out that without any plan of having a certain clothing item for a certain day of the week, I didn't do this on purpose, but I think I'm wearing the same colored shirt and the same sweater that I wore last week. But Debbie Upton gave me a comment that said, "Fix your collar." And I'll go into the boring, gritty details of why my collar's up in just a second. But I want to thank Debbie because it really made me think about my clothes and made me want to talk about today's topic, case clothed, what we say to ourselves when we get dressed each day. And Debbie, you took me back to a decision I made fairly early in my life, in high school, maybe around 10th grade, 10th or 11th. I'm going to say maybe mid 10th grade, late 10th grade. Here's what happened. Most of my childhood, I don't remember particularly any affiliation or allegiance to any particular kind of dress. You know, my mother would pick up collared shirts, or she'd not pick up collared shirts. I'd have T-shirts, and you know, maybe I had a favorite T-shirt now and then, a Dodger T-shirt, or you know, no big deal. I basically went to school in T-shirts and jeans. That was kind of the look, and still works for lots of American males in particular, of a certain age and a certain gender identity. Um, and I didn't really give a lot of thought of it. And then I hit junior high and was pretty unhappy in junior high, and moved on to high school and was pretty unhappy in in high school as well. And I realized, and I actually kind of went downhill, particularly in 10th grade, to the point where I kind of was really so disaffected, I kind of gave up. I kind of made this decision that nothing really matters. Does it really matter whether I get good grades or whether I don't get good grades? And I remember spending a lot of time at a certain point in junior high playing pinball at UCLA with my friends, Steve Ozran and Larry Ozran. And, you know, they'd finish their homework, and then Larry had a car, he was older, and they'd call me up and say, "You want to go play pinball?" And what are you doing? And I'd say, "Not reading Macbeth." That was particularly, we had to read Macbeth for 10th grade English. And so they'd pick me up, and we'd head over and play the Matahari game at the bowling alley in UCLA. Anybody who was at UCLA in the late 70s, you're going to remember that game, and you're going to remember that bowling alley. It's not there anymore. And that's how I kind of went through a lot of my 10th grade experience. And at a certain point, I think I failed a test on Macbeth because I hadn't read it and I didn't know what was going on, and I pretended I didn't care. I realized that I was letting myself down and I was lying to myself. I was not doing this at a certain amount of arrogance. And it's basically an idea of, I'm too smart for this. I realize it doesn't matter what kind of job I get, what kind of college I go to, you know, this very nihilistic perspective. And then something hit me and said, if I'm so smart, then why can't I pass a test on this play? All you got to do is read the test, read the book, and answer the questions, if Mr. Smart Guy. And I made a decision to make a major change and to make a commitment to being the person I wanted to be, whatever that looked like, whatever that meant, however I defined it. I'm looking. Somebody has joined this morning, and I want to thank you for being with us. I can't figure out how to see you, and if you're posting a comment, can't see how to see the comment in the Facebook setting. I'm going to move on. Thank you for being with me. And I realized that how I dressed had a lot to say about the person I wanted to be. And it was at a time when sort of the prep look was becoming popular, and I decided to go preppy. It was clear, it was definable. I could identify what clothes I needed to buy, collared shirts and sweaters, and and I made that decision. And I think at a certain point in high school, a lot of people make that decision. A lot of people went goth. A lot of people went punk. You know, some other people went preppy. I think it was all of in our own individual ways to decide. Some people went new wave. I think it was all of our ways to decide who we were going to be, and making that statement to the world. And so if you fast forward, I want to talk, when I took a job working in a domestic violence shelter, it was, there were families that were living there. They were in their apartments. It was very hands-on work where there was a school there. And so the families would take their children to the school. The women would take their children to school each morning. And so, they might have just rolled out of bed or thrown some food at the kids. You know how hard it is sometimes to get 7 and 10-year-olds out of the house. And that goes on everywhere. In a domestic violence shelter, in a 4,000 square foot home, it's always a challenge getting out the door. And so they'd sort of roll up just, glorified pajamas, and they'd get their kids to the classroom. And so it was, and sometimes the teachers they'll do a lot of floor work with the kids, or they'd be supervising PE. So, it wasn't an environment where they really needed to dress up, or it was inappropriate for them to dress up. But I was the CEO of the domestic violence shelter. And I wore a suit every day. I didn't wear a tie, but I always had a jacket and trousers and a collared, dress shirt. And I made that decision very early, because how we dress is a statement about who we are, about how we're holding ourselves out to the world. That's what I discovered in high school. But it's also a statement about what I think of you. So if I'm meeting somebody, like they say, like for a job interview, my wife is a career counselor, Vicki Rothman Career Counseling, and or Rothman Career Counseling actually is her business name. She always advises her clients to dress up for a job interview. Wear a suit and tie. If you're not sure for the men, if you're not sure what the dress code is, aim high, overshoot. You'll never be embarrassed looking better. You'll always be embarrassed looking worse than you were supposed to. Because you're making a statement in your dress that this is important to me. I remember interviewing for a new clinical director. And clinical directors do a lot of the floor work. They really get their hands dirty in terms of working with the kids and the mothers at the domestic violence shelter. And so in that role, dressing up in a suit like I did might not have been as appropriate. But I remember he put on this sort of like old style woven tie that he dragged out. I was like, boy, you dragged that out of the back of your closet. And I counted that as a positive. And I thought to myself, thank you for doing that, because you made a commitment to dress up, to make a statement that this is important for me. His clothes made a statement that this is important to me, and that your presence here is important to me. That's a lot of what we're saying when we get dressed. So they say, and I titled this as, I talked about the cliche in sort of the description of this as clothes don't make the man or woman. It's true. It's a very important idea. Who we are inside is far more important, of course, than how we dress, how we treat people, our daily courtesies, our consideration for others, far more important than how we dress. But that doesn't mean we can ignore the statement of what our clothes say. And I always want to bring it back to, because the work that I do as a progress coach is about examining our individual actions, our personal actions, our micro actions even, and examining what they're saying, what we're saying about how we want to live in the world. And I want to take a little bit of a detour on this and talk about people who are struggling with their body image. and I know that there are women who get dressed every morning frustrated because they look at themselves in the mirror and think whatever they put on, all they feel about themselves is fat. And so getting dressed in the morning for people who feel that way, and I know there are a tremendous number of people who feel that way, getting dressed in the morning is a little bit of a torture. Or getting dressed for a particular event is a little bit of a torture because you never feel like you're really representing your true self, that there's an external presence that you're projecting that is not representing who you are. And you feel bad about yourself and you feel bad about how you're represented in the world because of what you see in the mirror each morning. And I want to say that I don't have a magic answer for that. That is an extremely challenging and difficult problem. But I want to suggest that for a moment, anyone with that idea of their external presentation is not matching their internal sense of themselves or the internal person they want to be, I want to suggest that you think for just a moment, you would just entertain the idea that the world is not as involved in how I look, how this particular dress or shirt or tie, or does this tie look all right? The world is not quite as involved with it as we are. And what that means is that it doesn't undercut the idea that I need to dress to show my respect, that I need to dress appropriately. And that what I'm saying is a statement about who I am and what I care about for me and how I want to present myself. But it is kind of what I call like a get out of jail free card. If we're in jail with our self-image, remembering that most people are much more interested in engaging with us person to person, human to human, and that if we can just find for a moment the power to set aside our fears, our hesitation, our negative self-image, our internal self-talk that tells us I look bad, this is a horrible color on me, I look fat in this, is my tie tied properly? If we can set aside that and not let it get in the way of the human interaction, then we really are answering the question of, do clothes make the man or woman, with the truth of, no, they don't. What it's about is the energy that we project. So for me in high school, I needed to take collars and Debbie, without your permission, because I don't think you're going to approve, I'm going to keep my collar up, because if I fold it down like this, I feel like I'm in a church choir under my sweater. It feels like it's, and I don't like that look. This makes me feel like I can present the energy to the world that I want to present. And if we can just find a path, even for just one shining moment through our internal stories, and if there's something and then we can remind ourselves that it's about that part of ourselves that we project. So maybe there's an article of clothing or something that you can make your trademark that allows you to project that. So maybe for a woman, it might be a brooch or a pin or a scarf or an earring, that you just love, or that can be your kind of symbol, kind of token representation of the positive, strong, beautiful energy that you want to project. Because in our core, that's who we are. There's an idea that we're all made in the image of God, and that image of God is a beautiful rainbow image. And so let's be aware of our clothes. Let's think about how we're presenting ourselves and what are we doing to project that energy, to use our physical presentation, these superficial wrappings that we put around ourselves, to project that internal beauty that we all possess. Can we do that even for just one shining moment? I think that's the core question. And that's what's going to allow us to be the people we really want to be and to give the world what we really have to give it.